Human. They are human. Humans who have been renamed as economic migrants, asylum seekers, and refugees. Labels that lack care and compassion and paint pictures of people as less than deserving so our governments can justify their hostility and casually discard human beings as waste. Human beings that they've displaced, whose countries are being raped of natural resources by forces far too great for the indigenous populations to fight. People who have been made victims of global corporate greed disguised as democracy, forcing generations to flee to unknown places which are as brutal as the wars they've just escaped. Places upheld as civilized on the Western world stage, despite them failing to feed their own starving children, fund their own schools, and protect their own people's health. Places governed by politicians who perform altruism while serving their own private interests, lining their designer pockets with public funds and blaming the lack of spending on those who come here with nothing but the clothes on their backs and the trauma wounds still seeping from their skin. Just imagine having to explain your humanity to people who have none. Having to divulge 1,000 times the triggering stories of how you've gone from being someone to being seen as no one. To strange faces that scream hatred before their tightened lips even part to speak. To explain to those proud of flags that boast of conquering sky and sea but whitewash the blood that continues to feed their empire at the root why you, having survived genocide, should be treated with dignity. These are the people who get to decide who is migrant and who is human. It is not enough to have lost your home, livelihoods and loved ones. Not enough to have watched as soldiers stole your children's innocence and futures. Not enough that you saw no choice but to risk your newborn's life in the hope that you would save it by sailing across channels and seas in packed, cheap dinghies, pregnant with hope and hopelessness. Entire families have been sent to their deaths because the world chooses to close its eyes to the plights of those who it considers as less than human. For them to then arrive on these so-called civilized shores, having endured horrors we've only ever seen in films, to be met with hostility and abuse. Told to go back to a home that this country wiped out, blamed for taking the jobs that people look down on, denied access to healthcare, shelter, work, education and cash, made to feel shame and embarrassed for not speaking our language, abandoned on the streets of the world's richest cities, and then expected to feed a family on £35 a week because, as far as this country is concerned, female refugees don't give birth and don't bleed. And their babies don't need milk, medicine, clothes or nappies. Refugees don't feel pain. They don't travel, socialise and have hobbies. And we would rather feed donkeys and dig wells for £2 a week because avoiding accountability is cheaper than collective responsibility. I guess it will take for us to survive gas and bombs and rape, starvation, disease and red tape, for us to be forced to navigate killing fields, for us to see that humanity can be stolen from us the way our government steals it when it creates refugees. And that we are only ever one law away from seeking asylum from state-sponsored violence and poverty, but it shouldn't have to come to that. Their lives shouldn't only matter when our human rights are under attack. And we shouldn't do the right thing with expectations that they give something back when our country is to blame for the terror and attacks that has damaged these people indefinitely. These aren't migrants, asylum seekers and refugees. Human. They are human. And it is us, raised on hate and hypocrisy, that are lost and have lost our humanity.